My name's Ian Eastman. I'm with Evergreen Health. And one of the things that I think this county has as a real asset as we look at this opioid crisis is the treatment action team. And every month there's probably between 10 and 20 of us get together to kind of talk about approaches and things that we can take. It's a group of people that challenges each other, a group of people that encourage each other. It's a group of people that are learning from each other. And what we find is because of that association, we're kind of bringing up everybody's game, and the whole community benefits because of that. When we were planning the Hope and Healing sessions here today, we wanted to include as many local voices as possible. And as we made a list of who was doing some cool stuff and who we thought would share, we figured out that it was going to be like a 17-hour forum. So what we decided to do was we said, you know what? We're going to take these great, big, great ideas and we're going to condense them down into little, short presentations. And we're going to see how this thing goes. We're going to have a few folks that are going to talk about prevention, specifically with youth and children. And our first presenter is Melanie Witkowski. I practiced it so much I messed it up when I did it, for real. And she is the executive director of the Chautauqua Alcoholism and Substance Abuse Council, and she is doing a presentation called I'm Hurting Too. So come on up.
It's very hard to follow Rodney and Andy. Some wonderful information that was passed along. And today, what I wanted to talk about was children of addictions. Children of alcoholics, like Andy said, that's probably still one of our #1 concerns. It might not have an overdose every day. We might not see the health concerns directly. Saying it in the paper, when you see an obituary of somebody dying of alcohol, it's usually heart disease, cancer, but it's affecting a lot of individuals, especially our children. So I wanted to just briefly talk about, let's see, Annie, is it? Oh, they were timed, okay. Addiction, we know, is a disease, right? And about 4 times more likely, if they have a family member that's exposed to it, then they are 4 times more likely to struggle with that concern as well. And we know it's a struggle because addiction is the disease, and basically what we find is that the biology, the genetics, plus the choices that they make will equal the outcome that comes along with it. You know, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're predisposed to it, but they're more vulnerable, unfortunately, because of it. The stability in the home. And what we usually find is the family survival roles that these children will take on encompasses the hero child, scapegoat, the lost child, or the clown, or the mascot. And these are basically a mask that they put on. All right, this is a mask they put on to deal and to cope with the struggles that they're frustrated with. We have the hero child, usually the older one, usually the one that's bossy, usually the one that's parental. And this individual usually is trying to, do good as much as possible to kind of keep their secret on the individual secret that's going on in the family. They're trying to dispose and hide that concern that's going on. Then we have the scapegoat, the rebel child. This is the one that's always getting into trouble, the ones that teachers are like, I wish I knew what to do with this individual. But again, this is that role that they're putting on, this mask that they're putting on to cope with the pain that they're suffering with. All right, so then we've got our mascot. This is the one that, sticks pencils in their nose, and this is the one that's pulling the chair out from an individual. This is the person that really has a low self-esteem. This is the person that needs self-improvement. This is the person that has a very low self-image about themselves. All right, we need to utilize some skills to improve that. The lost child. This is the one that you cannot remember their name. If you can't remember a person's name in a classroom or in a group or on the soccer team, pay attention to that one. That's the lonely one. That's the one that has no friends. That's the one that kind of hides out in the back, that doesn't want to participate in games. Again, these are all the masks that they put on. It's because they're hiding behind the pain that they're feeling because of the suffering that's going on in the family. the dysfunction that's going on in the family, the don't talk, don't tell, all right? That's their way of coping with it, by putting on these masks. But if we can all identify these children and empower them to say something, empower them to open up about what their struggles are, whether it's addiction in the family, alcoholism in the family, maybe it's mental abuse, depression in the family, if we can empower them to share what's going on, then hopefully we can start to build these skills to build resiliency. But these are the 7 C's. These are what we want these individual students, these children to know, that they didn't cause it, they can't control it, they can't cure their family's disease, but they can learn how to cope by taking care of themselves and making healthy choices, like the life skills training. Okay, the life skills, we want to teach these kids coping skills, how to deal with frustration, stress, refusal, assertiveness skills, how to communicate, building up self-image and self-improvement, making healthy choices, and social skills. And so what I have is just a couple of examples on what you can do. Our prevention agencies can do it, but you can as well. So one thing we have is a coping wheel for those little ones, right? Because they need to cope. There's a lot going on in their life. You know, they create all those different pie pieces on things that are going to make them feel better. And this is something that easily can be done with little children. We also have a coping menu. You know, pick an appetizer, take 15 deep breaths, draw a color, listen to music, talk to a friend. I love this one. Play 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5 things you can see right now. All right. 4 things you can smell right now. 3 things you can touch right now. And 2, and I can't remember 2 and 1. It's so fast. 5 minutes goes quick. And then the best feeling in the world is knowing your presence is and absence means something to these people. There's absentee in these individuals' lives. But if you, a teacher, a counselor, a coach, can be that presence or that piece that's missing, that child might verbally not say anything to you, but if you can recognize the rebel, the scapegoat, the clown, the mascot, all right, or the lost child, the invisible child, you recognize some of those behaviors in them, ask them, what happened to you? All right, like Andy said, it's not only about the disease, it's the why. Why did they start? You know, why are they acting this way? What happened to you? All right, and that's kind of that trauma to understand what's going on with that child and what's happening in the home. So with that, I'm out of time. So 5 minutes is tough. So if you have any questions, I'll be here during the break. Thank you.
And when we get through the block of these prevention folks speaking, we are going to have a little bit of time for questions. So if you have a question for Melanie, just hold it for a second and you'll be able to ask it. Up next is the coordinator of Hope Chautauqua and basically the person that is making all of this happen this morning, Julie Franco, talking about youth empowerment.
Okay, inspire, believe, encourage, uplift, motivate, create a vision for youth with youth. Youth involvement can benefit us as well as them. Programs that are developed in partnership with youth are more likely to be effective at engaging them and therefore to have a greater impact. Youth empowerment opportunities promise impacts on 2 levels. The impact on the community that a group of youth might have as they participate in trying to reduce the harm of problems like underage drinking and tobacco and drug use. And 2, the impact of youth themselves as they attempt to impact their environment. Youth participating in these programs generally become highly informed, develop helpful skills, and become very committed to practicing what they preach. Youth empowerment done right involves and engages every element of the community, schools, homes, community members, and others. Youth, their families, and community partners are valued through this process. It's an investment that the community makes in our young people. Youth and adults work together to frame the solutions and take action. Youth empowerment involves helping youth identify, utilize, and maximize their potential. It involves providing knowledge about the things they wish to change. It involves helping youth to develop confidence and self-identity consistent with pro-social behaviors. And it also involves instilling in youth the enthusiasm and passion to create a change. Guiding youth to improve skills related to making change happen must be a significant part of youth-focused efforts. Youth advocacy is supporting a position or a cause And youth activism is youth planning and implementing actions to cause a change. Youth can take action and speak out to make things better. Sometimes there are even adults that need to be challenged. And my slides aren't moving, Annie. Okay, that's about where we are. Mobilizing youth to become advocates and catalysts for change can be our goal. We can work with youth to address risk and harm of substance abuse by empowering youth to lead their communities to collectively address local conditions that support unhealthy beliefs, unhealthy perceptions, unhealthy attitudes, and unhealthy behaviors, which in turn will reduce and prevent ongoing struggles with drugs and other high-risk behaviors. Our service that we would like youth to engage in can make our youth get involved beyond pressing the like or love or mad face button on Facebook, or beyond double-clicking for a heart on Instagram. They can do much more than favorite or retweet a tweet on Twitter. We can create an environment for youth to socially engage, learn leadership skills while building confidence for a successful career and fulfilling life. Youth empowerment serves as the ultimate launching pad to the real world. Still not moving. I do have the clicker. I guess they are moving. Youth empowerment programs are an intentional process focused on being proactive to promote protective factors in young people and to prevent risky attitudes and unhealthy behaviors. All youth have the capacity for positive growth and development, and we want to enable youth to thrive and flourish and prepare them for a healthy and happy, safe adulthood. Mobilizing youth to become advocates and catalysts for change can be our goal. We can work with youth to address risk of harm and of substance abuse and empower youth to lead their communities collectively to address local conditions that support unhealthy beliefs and perceptions and attitudes and behaviors. If I mention the strategic prevention framework, your eyes may gloss over, but what are the basics of problem solving? What is the real problem? Why is it a problem? Why is it a problem here? What are the factors in our community that need addressing? Who can address them and how? What does experience or research tell us can work? Let's use strategies that make sense and then evaluate their worth so we can do more of that or change them to make them better. Involving youth as partners in making decisions that affect them increases the likelihood that the decisions will be accepted, adopted, and become part of their everyday lives. Programs and activities are developed with youth rather than for youth. Empowering youth to identify and respond to community needs helps them become empathetic, reflective individuals, setting them on a course to potentially continue this important work in their future. What can this look like? Young people leading community awareness campaigns. Most are social marketing campaigns developed to promote awareness and specific prevention or health-related messages. We might see a campaign aiming to reduce the social acceptability of alcohol use and to challenge the notion that alcohol is an unavoidable part of our youth culture by featuring local people who live healthy, alcohol-free lifestyles. Creating media, public service announcements for radio, TV, movie theaters, billboards, fact sheets for use in all sectors of the community, schools, businesses, churches, and so on. We are already planning for a big effort in October to further enhance the reach of our Take It to the Box campaign, but with youth creating the products and then sharing them. Encouraging our young people to create great things and also to make a great impact in their world. Teaching others. Youth can prepare themselves to teach others by providing posters, flyers, fact sheets, media toolkits designed to educate peers, friends, and family about prescription drug misuse and abuse. Engaging in policy change, small changes and large changes. We could see our kids at school board meetings, town and city council meetings, even legislative events to stand up for the change that they believe will make a difference. The power of ideas, youth making a difference with improved self-efficacy, media literacy and presentation skills, increased engagement with pro-social peers, increased knowledge of consequences of substance use, increased understanding of big tobacco, big alcohol, big marijuana, and big pharma industry practices, increased understanding of legislative processes and policy issues. We have begun work on the Hope Youth Empowerment Program. This afternoon, CASIC's Lori Reynolds and Tracy Jesperson will present the details of the program and share an opportunity to look at ideas for implementing this in Chautauqua County schools and communities. The ultimate goal is to implement an approach that supports and values young people in the context of the larger community. If we're going to see a change in the drug issues of the young adult and adult populations here, we have to start with a more concerted and informed effort with our young people. Youth empowerment is achieved through participation in youth empowerment programs, and prevention does work.
Thanks a lot, Julie, and we'll have you back for some questions and answers. Coming up next is there's some cool stuff going on with the ICE 8 initiative, and so we invite Brady Doink to the stage to talk about kind of a whole child approach to prevention. So take it away, man.
Thank you. Do I need to use a clicker too, or are we working? We're good. Okay. Pardon? Use the clicker? I got you. I'll be quick. As we look at ICE 8, really it's a coordinated school health partnership. And the model you see on the left here is the whole school, whole community, whole child approach that we have there with WISC. And really the child is at the center of that. This quote from a former Surgeon General, we talk about you can't educate a child who isn't healthy, and you can't keep a child healthy who isn't educated. As you thought about all those different components that were on that WISC model, all those things working together to educate that whole child. As we look into the Michigan model, that was mentioned a little bit earlier, the vast majority of our districts are working on this at a K-6 level. You see some of the prevention-related topics that are addressed in that Michigan model happens in the classroom with the classroom teacher. Is a great opportunity for that. You see some of the prevention-related topics and then the grade levels that they're addressed at the K-6 level where that greatest amount of emphasis is provided. For example, you see safe use of medicines in kindergarten, first grade mostly. You know, poisoning prevention, kindergarten, first grade, third grade, and it goes on down the list. We also have several resources for the middle high school age groups. Really at the middle high school level, we are doing a good job in our schools with educating and getting students into class. So these are really supplementary resources and information, CDs, handouts, brochures, things of that nature that all work at the middle high school level as well that our educators are using. Next one. As many of you know, New York State Ed released a guidance document specifically for heroin and opioids, and we're certainly working to bring this into our Michigan model curriculum as well, so our gen ed teachers are up to date on what some of those new standards and guidelines are specifically to a lot of those prevention topics. Most importantly, we go beyond the behavior. As you see in our cartoons here, our students are sometimes saddled with other things and not just, figuring out why they were late to class or why they're struggling or acting out. We have students that didn't have breakfast that morning, they're sick, didn't get a good night's sleep. All those things that are things that we're talking about when we talk about the whole child and getting the bigger picture. Restorative practice. Alicia Gossett is our restorative practice guru at Erie Two Boces. The main point of all this is we want to make sure that the kids, the ones that we're expelling and suspending are really the ones that need to be in the classroom the most and getting that prevention education. They can't get it if they're not in the classroom. So restorative practice kind of takes a look at that. You kind of see what some of the things are there when we talk about for the students, when we go through our trainings and forums, things that are for the teachers. We talk about managing conflict constructively, life skills, all that good stuff. Briefly mentioned trauma-informed care. Chautauqua County Mental Hygiene, we're partnering with them. They're really the backbone of this initiative. We're just working on ways to make sure our teachers are aware of it and can use that in their classroom and how that might look from their perspective. Also see some of the common reactions, traumatic stress, all things that we discuss with our teachers in our trainings. to kind of to look for and be aware of for their students. So they're kind of the first line of defense in those situations sometimes. And briefly mention the Ice Aid Coalition. This is a relatively new group for us. It came out of our year 2 kickoff event last December. We're bringing school partners together, community partners, and we're really collaborating on how to best educate that whole child as we go back to that WISC model at the beginning. Certainly opportunities for funding and certainly opportunities for collaboration. The more we get into this and work with this, it truly does take a village. That saying resonates in this, where we really need everybody at the table. It's not just the teachers, it's not just the administrators, it's not just the health department and the community partners. We need to bring all those people under one roof, and that's really what we're trying to do with ICE8 in the best interest of the whole child. So, as we say, grab your resources and hop on the bus so we can bring you to school. We want to connect you with those school districts, with those teachers, and get you in the classrooms as much as possible, because all the great work that you folks are doing, and the students are obviously at the schools, sometimes the easiest place to get to them. More information, Linda Finn, she sends her apologies, she couldn't be here today, a couple of things came up, but she's the coordinator of our program. I'm kind of the community health education specialist and the go-to person for the ICE8 related stuff, so feel free to reach out to me anytime if you think you could be a help or want to join our coalition or anything like that. So thank you very much, appreciate your time.
Thanks, okay, and we invite Julie and Melanie back up here. We're going to ask some questions. I believe there is a roving microphone going around somewhere. Okay, we have it tucked away over here. So if you have a question, I noticed that in all of your presentations there was kind of a common thread going on, which was youth and young people. So as we're kind of waiting for a question, I guess my question is, as a community member and as a grandparent and stuff, my heart really breaks for kids. What can family members and interested community members do to help out kids?
Sure, I can take that first. As luck would have it, two of our main components of the WISC model is family involvement and community engagement. We're really looking to bring in parents and community members into the school, whether it be could be as a volunteer or a guest speaker, or even serving on your district's school health advisory council or wellness committee, some districts call them. That's a great way for parents and community members to get involved and really impact policy in the district all around wellness. So those are a couple ways that we really try to engage family and community members.
There's a few things that we're doing right now. We have a program called Active Parenting Now, which is run currently at the Mental Health Association, and we're looking to expand our services in the Dunkirk area as well. We have a parenting program starting in June, free for parents to participate in. In addition to that, we have a video library that's going to be coming out, which is going to focus on the life skills that was mentioned in my presentation regarding how to deal with refusal skills and assertiveness skills. How do I handle my stress, coping with anxiety? We have two of our stars that are in the videos here, Tracy and Trish, that are going to be just role modeling what parents can do with their children at home. So, they're going to be able to access that. So that should be coming out soon.
And I just wanted to say that, there really is a role for everyone in prevention, and that prevention is a thing, it doesn't just happen. So I think it's really important that every person understands that they need to get knowledgeable about whatever the issues are they want to prevent. They need to get knowledgeable about what the resources are, and really understand what the risk and protective factor framework looks like. Like, what are the risks that are predictive of problem behaviors like substance abuse, but also teen pregnancy, school dropout, violence, depression and anxiety, and then what are the protective factors and how do we reduce risk and enhance protection?
Well, thank you very much for sharing the cool things that you're doing. Everybody give them a big round of applause here, and thank them for participating in this. 5 minutes goes fast. I'm trying to figure out how they say Abraham Lincoln did the Gettysburg Address in like 2 minutes, right? But he didn't have to monkey around with PowerPoint or something, so I think that may be it. So, the next person we're inviting to the stage is Melissa Genestre from Chautauqua County Mental Health. And, we all work with families that are so desperate, and she has some good things to say about motivating people, right?
Yes.
Okay, well, have some fun with it.
Right. Hello? I'm going to scoot over here. My name is Melissa Genestre. I'm an outpatient substance abuse counselor. I've been working for the Chautauqua County Department of Mental Hygiene for about 9 years now. One of the really fantastic, cool programs, clicker, that we're implementing is called CRAFT. It stands for Community Reinforcement and Family Training. I should have had a millennial because the print might be difficult to see. First and foremost, addiction as a family disease is one of the reasons why we're implementing CRAFT. Excuse me, nerves. CRAFT is a model for hooking family members and concerned significant others to motivate their loved ones that are using substances into treatment. Traditional substance abuse treatment, I think the way that we think of it is we want those substance users engaged in counseling. This is a model for the concerned loved ones. Oh, it went on me. Family members can and do play a role in recovery, which is extremely important and a focus of CRAFT. CRAFT was developed by Dr. Richard Myers out of the University of New Mexico. It is an evidence-based treatment program. It offers an alternative to Al-Anon and the Johnson Institute interventions, which is what we're probably more familiar with. Al-Anon, the basis of Al-Anon to help concerned loved ones is a loving detachment, which to tie into Rodney's wonderful presentation, if you are a Gen Xer, which I am, or a millennial, loving detachment may not make much sense when you're trying to encourage and motivate somebody to accept substance abuse treatment. Can I go backwards? Yes, okay. Ooh. Now what's happening here, Annie? Okay, confrontation is the basis of a Johnson Institute intervention, which we're probably all familiar with, the TV show Intervention on A&E. Brings all of your loved ones into a room and they confront you and threaten their attachment with you if you do not accept treatment. What we know is that is about, my next slide. Okay, thank you. It's about 20 to 30% effective to engage somebody into treatment using an intervention. And research tells us that somebody who's had an intervention and accepts substance abuse treatment is actually more likely to have a return to substance misuse behavior than an intervention where we use motivation and a loving attachment to motivate that person. And you'll see the percentage for engaging loved ones for Al-Anon is even lower than a Johnson Institute intervention. Yeah, that's this one. So Al-Anon, Johnson Institute, and CRAFT is on the end between 80 and 90% of families who participate in a CRAFT program, their loved one will accept and enter into treatment. The goals of CRAFT are to pretty much using that loving attachment, communication, and motivation to encourage your loved one into treatment, but also to reduce the negative impacts of the addiction on the family. Enhance your quality of life. And these ladies are having an awesome time because they participated in CRAFT. No, I don't know that. I took it off of Google. In CRAFT, one of the things we try and do is enable healthy behaviors, but isn't enable a dirty word. Because so often in addictions, that's what we've been told, and that's what it feels like. But what we're trying to do is enable positive behaviors, positive interactions, and motivation. That's just a cute little cartoon. The myth of rock bottom. Rock bottom is a myth. For a lot of substance users, rock bottom could potentially be death. We know that we're dealing with this. It's extremely serious. Somebody doesn't, and I'm going to piggyback off of Andy O'Brien, somebody does not need to hit rock bottom before they can accept treatment and start to heal. And neither does the family. Natural consequences. This is a big part of CRAFT, probably a difficult part to support, but we do encourage family members to let natural consequences happen. Obviously, keeping in mind safety and protection. And family supportive treatment is ongoing and invaluable. If there's one thing that I do hear from my people often is that they want their family members engaged in a program like CRAFT because they want positive interaction, they want positive reinforcement. It's very important to have validation in their recovery. And when we know that when families are engaged in a program like CRAFT, healing takes place. So, oh, where's my flower? Okay, so I'm going to end with this analogy. If you have a flower, and I heard this and it made sense to me, if you want your flower to grow, you don't take your flower if it's struggling and put it in the dark. You don't cut off its water. You don't smother it. You water it. You give it sunshine. You give it positive reinforcement. Maybe a little fertilizer, because that helps too. But that's how you grow. Thank you. I like it.
Thanks a lot, Melissa. Well, this looks kind of fun, so I think I'm gonna do one. Harm reduction is probably a pretty, it's a pretty easy idea to grasp, okay? It's exactly what it says it is. It's reducing harm, right? And whether you know it or not, you are all expert harm reductionists, okay? So go ahead, everybody stand up here for a minute. Let's go ahead, stretch. I don't want you falling asleep on me or anything like that, okay? Now I'm gonna say some harm reduction behaviors, and if you've done this practice, then take a seat and stay sitting, okay? So let's see if I'm right in my assumption of everybody here. Okay, have you ever used like a life preserver or life jacket? Okay, take a seat and stay sitting. Have you ever had a designated driver? Have you ever been a designated driver? Okay, take a seat if that's the case. Have you ever substituted, say, like a low-calorie sweetener for, for sugar or something like that? Done that on purpose. Okay, let's see. Andy, you live dangerously. Seatbelt. Do you buckle up? Have you ever buckled up? There we go. You guys are all experts. Okay, that's my presentation. Thank you very much. What am I going to add to that? Well, harm reduction isn't anything new to the human services field. It probably came to prominence back in the 1980s during the AIDS crisis. And harm reduction had a way of keeping people healthy and reducing risks, and frankly, just keeping thousands of people alive in a way no other intervention would have. Nowadays, when we talk about harm reduction, because of the opioid crisis, we tend to talk about it in terms of addiction. Now, some of the harm reduction interventions you may have heard about, if you've been watching the news lately, people have been talking about supervised injection facilities. There's also medicated assisted treatment like Suboxone and methadone. When you have a Narcan kit, that's an example of harm reduction there. Good Samaritan laws are an example of harm reduction. And, the program that I represent and stuff, the Evergreen Health Syringe Exchange Program, syringe exchange, okay, getting people clean supplies is an example of harm reduction. Now, why in the world would anybody want to provide harm reduction? This is why it's important, okay? The Surgeon General says that 10% of people with a substance use disorder are in treatment. That's good work, okay? That's not a criticism. And I know there's a lot of people right here, as I see faces, are part of the reason why that 10% is there. But isn't it as equally important that we ask ourselves what is happening with the other 90% who are in treatment? Well, because we have a good, data-driven public health system, we know they're at high risk of injury, and they're at high risk of illness, and they're at high risk of death. Harm reduction can provide people with the tools and strategies they need to keep them alive, to help them live a better quality of life. What are some of the successes of harm reduction programs around the world? Well, here's a couple things. Where there is harm reduction and it's widely embraced, you see less overdose deaths. You see less incidence of hepatitis C and HIV. And it saves a community a lot because it's intervening in a lot of health issues at an earlier stage or preventing them altogether. Syringe exchange programs, like I represent, mean less needle stick injuries on the part of law enforcement and other first responders. It means more syringes disposed of properly so kids aren't picking them up. And they don't increase crime, and they don't increase drug use. Now, we're all supposed to come up with a big idea when we do these talks and stuff, so I think I'm running out of time here pretty quick, so I'm going to give you my big idea, okay? And this is it. Harm reduction is not about condoning drug use any more than buckling your seatbelt is condoning car accidents. Harm reduction is all about making sure that 100% of everybody during this crisis comes out with a good quality of life and they can engage in the hope and healing. And if there's one thing we need these days, it's a lot more hope and healing. Thanks a lot. And we will call Mr. Stephen Cobb, star of Stage and Screen, to the stage. And he's going to be talking about kind of a topic that's associated with harm reduction, stigma, right?
Yes. Stigma and me, or are you with me or are you against me? Okay, so what is stigma? Well, if we go to the dictionary and look, Webster says stigma is a mark of shame or discredit, or the stigma of cowardice, or an identifying mark or characteristic specifically, a specific diagnostic sign of disease. Now, I wanted something that applied more to us, so I went to the Center for Addiction and Mental Health and their website, and this is how they define stigma. Stigma refers to negative attitudes, prejudice, remember this word, and negative behavior, discrimination, towards people with substance use and mental health problems. Prejudice and discrimination. Really? I mean, even when I went about to prepare this, the first thing that came to my mind was not the words prejudice and discrimination. But I have already fallen into the PowerPoint trap. We're supposed to keep this moving and fast, so I'm going to step away from the slides and tell you a bit of a story. I know of a participant who entered, who was sent to an intensive outpatient program. The participant was told to go there 5 days a week. When the participant arrived, he was diagnosed with a substance use disorder. That person was using crystal meth. He was diagnosed with depression, and he was diagnosed with anxiety. When that person got there, that person was not ready to stop using yet, but continued to show up. And the things that often happen when somebody walks into a treatment environment but hasn't stopped using, all of those things started to happen. The person lost his job. The person lost his insurance, so he couldn't come to treatment because he lost his insurance, and that person had to wait until that person could get signed up for Medicaid. Once the person lost his job, he started coming late to groups, falling asleep in groups, perhaps saying inappropriate things in groups, and his counselor became very frustrated with that person. The counselor reached a point where the counselor said to this person, I think you need to go and be homeless before you will want to take recovery seriously. That's actually what the counselor said to that person. And basically what happened was that participant stopped engaging in treatment, stopped coming, and the treatment program lost contact with that person. Now, I was never aware that homelessness was considered treatment for a substance use disorder with anxiety and depression. I didn't lose contact with this person. This person was me. And that was my last experience with a treatment provider. And now I'm standing here in front of you with long-term sobriety. And I just want to reassure all the treatment providers that are sitting right here that it's none of you, okay? So, when I was told to go and be homeless, which I did, it wasn't until I was able to make contact with a harm reduction program in New York City, and that was called the Positive Health Project. And their goal was to keep me safe, provide clean needles for my use, to keep me from becoming HIV positive, and to keep me from becoming infected with Hep C. And they did all that. But you know what else happened? They formed a relationship with me. They met me where I was at. They allowed me to come there high. They gave me food when I was hungry. When I was there, if I fell asleep, they directed me to a sleeping room where I could sleep. And they welcomed me with a smile on their face every day I walked in. Okay. So, what happens now is we want to look and see how, with my example, how as a community do we move forward to fight stigma? So here's a couple things. Know your facts. When you're talking to people, know your facts about addiction. Let people know that recovery is possible, and long-term recovery is possible. We always focus on the people who are not failing or the negative facts. Know the facts, and especially the positive ones. Be aware of your attitudes and behaviors. It's very important. The woman who met me at the door every day when I walked into the Positive Health Project had a smile on her face and welcomed me. Choose your words carefully. How many times have you heard people refer to Suboxone or methadone as a dangerously addictive drug? And how many times have you heard that? Here's another way we can refer to those. How about medication-assisted treatment? Now, you know what else is medication-assisted treatment? Insulin is for someone who's diabetic. You know what else is a medication-assisted treatment? Coumadin is for somebody who has heart conditions. Those are all, and there are many other examples too. And you might even be able to make the case that those drugs are addictive, because if the patient stopped using them, their life would sure change pretty quickly. Educate others. Look for opportunities to pass on true facts and correct people, especially the media. If you're watching TV or you're watching the news and you see a portrayal of someone with a substance use disorder and you don't like that, call them. Channel 2 has a number you can call. So does Channel 4. Let people know when they are wrong, challenge the myths and stereotypes, and remember that incorrect facts, descriptions, and negative words, they affect people's lives. Focus on the positive. Remember, substance use disorders are just one part of the person. How often do we focus on that one part, the actual active addiction? We're all sick of the negative stories. Let's talk about some of the positive ones. And support people with dignity, respect, and support people's choices and encourage efforts. I had a conversation with a mother on Saturday at the Brielle concert, and her son was going into treatment and was going to be taking Suboxone, and she had reservations about Suboxone. But we had a discussion about how she was going to support his choice and not talk to her son about her reservations with that drug. That's how you support people's positive choices in recovery. And remember, how would you like to be treated? So this can all seem overwhelming. How do we do this? Well, I think we can do it. I moved to New York City in 1984, and when I landed in New York City, that was in the right in the middle of the AIDS crisis. And these organizations throughout New York State worked very hard to eliminate stigma with HIV and AIDS. And one of the things that they did so well is they formed a community to support people who are HIV positive. They challenged stigma. One of the biggest things that we had to deal with in New York City at that time was that funeral directors would not bury people who were HIV positive. So we would go and meet with funeral directors and talk to them about how to safely deal with somebody who is HIV positive. And that's what we need to do in the recovery community. So we create strong communities. When we do, stigma disappears and recovery flourishes. So I have a homework assignment for everyone. And I think for me, this was something that I discovered that helped me the most with stigma. Think of 2 words that you use that are stigmatizing and try to change them, okay? For me, the word was addiction. I try on a daily basis to not use the word addiction. I'm in recovery. The other word that I've tried not to use is junkie. Sometimes when we get together, there's a little bit of gallows humor at 12-step meetings or other things like that. So every time I want to use those 2 words, I stop myself and change them. And as I've done that, I've diminished the stigma that I spread in our community. Thank you.
Quite yet, because we have some questions here. Okay, we have Ann, our millennial with the roving microphone. I think that's called interactive or something like that, you know? If you have a question, you know, please pose it. But I guess, you know, hearing about this with stigma and your experiences, and thank you for sharing that story and what impact I'm sure that's made with everybody. Melissa, I'm wondering in your work, as families are trying to kind of help their loved one and stuff, how have you seen maybe stigma, you know, impact at work?
Well, excuse me, I think stigma is pretty well entrenched, and I think it prevents families from wanting to access help for themselves because of fear of judgment, fear of not having a real good understanding of addiction in recovery, and I use the word, sorry. What do you replace it with?
Substance use disorder.
Substance use disorder. We need to try that.
Because it's substance use disorder is long and addiction is short, but you know, it's about changing a behavior.
Got it. I want it. And so I think that the stigma often prevents families from seeking help because just as the person who's living with substance use disorder feels stigma and shame, and that can prevent seeking out treatment, I think that because it's a family issue, same.
And Steve, you know, you know, your work with folks down to MHA and some of the things, how have you kind of seen, you know, stigma inhibit somebody's involvement?
Well, the way I think I noticed it the most with stigma at the MHA is the internalized stigma that people in recovery have, and the way that people in recovery will limit their possibilities going forward in the future. How can I ever get my driver's license back? How can I go back to school? I'll never be able to enter that career because of my record. And that's the thing that I find at the MHA that we really have to work on, to the internalized stigma that people in recovery have.
Yeah, and you know, and I would just add in there that there's also just like systemic stigma that runs very deep through a lot of, you know, institutions in our society and stuff. And I have a friend named Trish that works out of the Buffalo office for Evergreen, and one time we were talking about this, and she said, you know, a lot of these conversations about change really revolve around people getting the courage they need to do something right for people they don't like. You know, so there's a lot of levels that we can challenge stigma, you know, both personally and systemically in society. So thanks folks, I really appreciated that. And thank you for holding the microphone and stuff. I will make sure you get a certificate of participation for doing that, even though no one asked the question and stuff. Okay, now we're going to move on to the recovery portion of the Level Up Talks. And since I lost my sheet somewhere along the way, is it over there? Bill Moses, okay. Bill does not have a PowerPoint today, but maybe Moses will bring some stone tablets up or something. Oh, there he is.
Thanks. So my name is Bill Moses. I'm here with Oxford House. Thank you. We're really excited because we've got an Oxford House now in Jamestown. Billie Jean Hubert, Kim Carlson came to myself and Dave Johnson a little over a year ago, approached us with the presentation of the need to get something like Oxford House in this area, and you know, they've worked very hard to bring it to pass. Just to give you a little bit of background, Oxford Houses are supportive living homes. They're democratically run by their membership, which makes them very unique. There's no counselors, there's no employees there on site making sure things happen, and they're financially self-supporting. So the men and women living in the houses pay to support the house, pay to maintain the house. There's over 2,100 houses nationally. They've been at this a long time. I think 1977 was when the concept first began in Maryland. They now exist in 42 states, and up in Buffalo, we've got 15 houses, 135 beds, largely over the past 15 years since I've been at it. I'm an alumni of this program. We're non-professional. There's no outreach in New York State other than those of us that know that this program works and want to see it expand and expand to meet the need. Oxford House has been listed by SAMHSA as a best practice on the National Registry of Evidence-Based Programs and Practices. Billie Jean said that would be very important to you all. I don't really know what that means, but the topic is very appropriate given what you just talked about, Steve, with stigma, especially that internal stigma that you mentioned. The topic that Ian and I talked about me sharing was for self-efficacy. And I heard that term kind of tossed around, and I knew that existed in Oxford Houses, but hadn't really looked all that much into exactly what it was and how it occurs and how to foster it. I just know that it happens there, and it happened for me, and that it was very impactful. But if there's an internal stigma that people in recovery have that inhibits their ability to progress through the recovery, self-efficacy would be what combats that directly. It's the belief in one's ability to be successful in something. And in recovery, it's crucial. On the way driving up here, we were thinking about how it relates to step work, that in step 2, you come to believe that you can be restored to sanity, and you can't go further beyond that point. So that internal self-efficacy, that belief in your ability, is what then allows you to continue on from there. And there's a lot of studies I came across, things way above my pay grade as to the correlation between self-efficacy and long-term sobriety. But as far as how it's fostered, that's what I can comment on, because in the past 16 years working with the men and women in the Oxford Houses in Buffalo, I see that on a daily basis. And I see people come in that have that internal stigma, don't see themselves being successful. Myself, thinking back to when I moved into an Oxford House, had no idea what the future was going to hold, no idea what it was going to take to make any of these changes. And over time, the environment that you're in an Oxford house creates those opportunities. The reliance on the residents to govern themselves enables and also requires that the guys, the men and women living there, develop new skills. You know, you've moved into the house, we're now electing you to be the house treasurer. Here's the checkbook, make sure the bills get paid on time. You know, and at our house business meeting every week, what do we need to pay? And we're looking to you to give a summary of the bank account. And that's not anything I had experience with, that's a new skill for me. And now the confidence that comes from that, you know, that I'm a part of this group. There's not someone showing up to my meeting, paying the bills, making sure that I made my bed. It's a group of my peers that are entrusting me with that responsibility. And I can't understate how valuable that is and really why the whole program works. You can look at oxfordhouse.org, there's a lot of information. They've been studied for years and years and years. DePaul University does a myriad of studies on the success rate. They're over 80% successful after 2 years, people moving into Oxford houses nationally. That's 4 to 5 times national averages. And if you ask me why, it comes down to this concept that the men and women, once you've moved in there, you're a part of. There's a camaraderie that's formed. You are now responsible to make sure this happens for other people. And just a couple of quick points. The focus is not on the problem. Day-to-day living in an Oxford house with a group of my peers, I'm not thinking about not using. I'm thinking about the other aspects of our lives together, the other things that need to be done, making a chore list for people to do, and recording minutes, and you know, the business that's associated. Once 3 houses exist in an area, there's a chapter form. Now I'm being invited to a chapter meeting, and there's a whole other group of things, you know, and fundraising and conventions, and a lot of other positive outlets that you can invest yourself in, that a person in especially early recovery can invest themselves in and see an immediate and direct impact. It's not a far-fetching thing. I want to make these changes so that someday I'll have a better life. I'm seeing changes immediately. I'm seeing improvements in the house around me. You know, we want to paint this house. We want to make it nice. We want to rent a shampooer and clean the carpets. Things that I think maybe are taken for granted nowadays, but back then in early recovery, that meant a lot to be able to invest in something that I was a part of. And that's what you find in these houses. Two important factors that I'll close with that really bring home, I think, and have a powerful impact on the men and women in the houses is that the accepting of new members. This is another responsibility that when you live in the house, you're interviewing people who want to come there and live there as well. And it takes an 80% majority of house members to accept someone new. So I may only have a month clean or 2 months clean, and I'm sitting here now interviewing someone who is even newer than I am, reviewing in them characteristics that I maybe haven't even identified in myself, and trying to determine if this is the right environment for them. You know, and it's just the relationship that forms with even a very newly recovering person to now have this person come to you and say, will you accept me in? You know, it puts a very strong onus on the members to help that person along, to do everything we can for them to bring them along to the culture that we've got created in the house. And the last one, probably the most powerful one, is the expulsion of members who relapse. In an Oxford house, if you return to drinking or drug use, you're immediately expelled by your membership. They hold an emergency meeting, they'll call you out, you be confronted, and the majority of the house feels that you've used, you're asked to leave. You've got 45 minutes. And you know, the houses have put plans in place of where do you want us to take you in that event, if it's, you know, to a detox, to a hospital, to a family member. But it makes it very real to the members living there that, you know, that could be me. I can still remember, I was just talking with some guys from the houses in Buffalo, the first member who was expelled after I lived there. He was the next most senior member besides me. I was, you know, the newest. But we're going to meetings every day. We're working the program together. You know, I would have never imagined that this guy would fail, that he would relapse. And I'm advocating for him in the meeting. No, I don't think that he's used. And eventually, you know, it's not a probation officer or a parole officer or a judge. It's a group of your peers addressing you. And eventually he acknowledged and said, yeah, I did. I relapsed. And it just set home for me at that point how real this is. You know, how important the work that we're doing, even just as a brand new recovering guy, how important the work I was doing within the members of my house was. And that belief that I could be successful in seeing someone who wasn't, that I could relate to, that I was there with every day, living with, you know, seeing every day, really set the stage for me to know, okay, I can be successful at this. You know, I'm not going to go down that road. I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that, you know, 16 years later, I'll be still here helping. So the booth there in the back, if you have additional information that you need, stop by, and like I said, oxfordhouse.org has a ton of information for you as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Bill. And next up is Sheridan Smith, and he has a new program that he's been working with called Refuge Recovery, and he's going to be explaining what's important about mindfulness and compassion in recovery. So take it away.
Thank you. Okay, so first thing I'm going to have you do is just take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. And that was entirely for me. I'm super nervous. I run Refuge Recovery at MHA, which is a group based on the Buddhist practices of mindfulness and compassion. It's based on the statement that all beings have the power and potential to free themselves from suffering. Not just the suffering of addiction, but suffering in general. You don't have to be a Buddhist to go. It just uses the technology of meditation and compassion. It uses some of those practices, and these are becoming more accepted in the treatment community at large. Mindfulness-based cognitive therapy saw a lot of success. In 2010, someone created mindfulness-based relapse prevention, which is based on science, but that's a really big tongue twister, so MBRP. And what that does is uncover habitual patterns, the hidden things that go on in your minds that lead to relapse. And it tries to uncover those mechanisms that take control of our minds and give you a new way of relating to basically yourself. The goals of mindfulness-based relapse prevention are, number one, and I'll come up in a second, to develop awareness of personal triggers and habitual reactions, and to learn to create a pause in the seemingly automatic process. Number two, to change our relation to discomfort, the trauma that was spoken about earlier, and to recognize those challenging emotional and physical experiences and to respond to them in skillful ways. Number three, to foster a non-judgmental, compassionate approach towards ourselves and our experiences. And number four, to build a lifestyle that supports both mindfulness practice and recovery. The first goal is pretty straightforward. Learning your triggers is important, but a lot of people don't focus on internal triggers. That thought you have, which leads to a feeling, which throws you off balance. That thing that comes from within you, that you can't stop and you can't run away from. Sometimes when you meditate, you have to sit still, obviously. And you have to sit with a lot of thoughts, especially at the beginning. And sometimes those thoughts are disturbing, and sometimes the disturbing thoughts are true. And when you're meditating, you can't run away, you can't do anything about them, you just have to sit there. And you have to give yourself space to move beyond them. It's all the stuff that's coming in. I've never done a PowerPoint before. I think I miss that, being a millennial. But what happens is you see that disturbing thought, and you see the desire to use, or the desire for some form of self-harm, or the desire to run, and you don't. And you see that process stop. Especially because you have people sitting right next to you that aren't getting up. And that changes your relationship to it. The second goal of MBRP is changing the relation to discomfort. So the first noble truth of Buddhism is that suffering exists. Don't run away from it. Don't pretend it isn't there. Drugs were the way to do that. But when something goes wrong, when we lose someone we love, when we've done something of which we're ashamed, when the world comes crashing down, for no good reason, everyone wants to run away. No one is special in that. Everybody hurts. What's different about mindfulness is the way of dealing with it. You stop and you face it, and you can have compassion for yourself. When you know how easy it is to run, when you know how easy it is to lash out, when you know how easy it is to just say screw it all and do something easy, you have compassion for the person that wants to do that inside yourself. and you have compassion for the person out there that's doing that right now. The person who's running. The person who's not facing what's going on. I just like that. This is a heavy talk. So compassion is important. To be somebody like this, who's smiling and laughing, you have to understand that pain is going to happen. People are going to mess up. You are not going to live up to perfection. But you have to be able to face that. You have to be able to see that without judging yourself or kicking yourself or listening to that story that you have to be perfect. No one is perfect. No one is alone. Everybody is a work in progress. And that's fine. So when you see your mind, when you see how it works, when you see suffering clearly, you know how to get yourself through it. It isn't instant, and it isn't ever finished. You'll continue having to learn how to deal with your mind and how to deal with suffering. But eventually you'll become more free. You'll start living more compassionately. You'll start living more freely. And I'll end with this quote from Dr. Sarah Bowen, who actually created the program in Michigan. I think where it's really different is that we're looking at the human condition and what it means to be human, much more than simply asking, how are you not going to not use drugs again? That's why it's written. That's where it's a radical shift. This is just a way to deal with life being what it is. It's just a way to confront it without running away. Thank you.
Thanks, Sheridan. And Sheridan, you know, if it's you know, not too much, he's also running camera today too. So there it is. Okay, so nothing like multitasking. Okay, up next is Pastor Brent Heinzman, and he's here representing the Addiction Response Ministry. And Brent is also kind of taking a new position, new role here with Strawberry Ministries, where you're a regional mobilizer. Okay, so he is going to be our next presentation on recovery is a spiritual matter. So take it away, man.
Thank you so much, Ian. Good day, everyone. Again, my name is Brett Heinzman. I'm with Addiction Response Ministry, where we are seeking to bring a unified response to the problem of addiction from the unified church in our area. And so I want to talk to you today about the fact that recovery is indeed a spiritual matter. And so we have this problem this year. If you've mowed your yard this year, you've seen something in it called a dandelion. And our friend the dandelion, I'm comparing to our issue with addiction, is a surface issue. I can mow it today, and I can walk out my door tomorrow, and what's back? The dandelion, right? If you want to get rid of the dandelion, we have to see the transformation of the entire being of the dandelion. And in regards to the person, we are a three-part person. We are body, soul, and spirit. So what we're looking at is the surface symptoms or the deep issues or the root causes. And in the spiritual issue, especially bringing a Christ-centered biblical response to addiction, we are looking at dealing with not just the addiction, it is a symptom of what lies deep under the surface. So we look at the symptomatic trajectory when we talk about the spiritual solution. We have the spirit, that is at the very root of us. It's that part of us that's eternal. It relates entirely to God, for He gave us that spirit, and it one day returns to Him. In the second part of the trajectory, we then look at the soul. The soul is our will, our thoughts, our emotions, our patterns of thought. So many of you have spoken to this today. We talk about in childhood how things are developed. We learn sinful patterns from generations. All of this is unspoken to, our heart and our desires. These things become broken when they spill out of a sinful spirit through the soul and finally to the body, the flesh and bone. And if we think about it, our body tends to follow whatever happens in the spirit and the soul. Whatever happens in my mind, if I have an issue of shame in my mind, I will not go outside for fear of rejection, right? So whatever happens inside of us in these areas, the body follows. The spiritual illness is sin. It's at the root. In Romans 7, the Apostle Paul does this awesome job of describing the war that's within us. I want to do the right thing, but I can't. I want to do these incredible things, but something is inside me. There's this war in my very soul that is going on. But he says, I myself don't do it. It's sin living in me. So we have this condition. So we see two things at work. We see the sinful nature as the root cause, and we see the works of the flesh that are the symptoms. And in even speaking to our friend who talked about stigma today, that stigma exists in the church. And Addiction Response Ministry even wants to erase the simple little, well, just get over it issues that are even spoken from well-meaning people in the church. Because we look at what the Word of God does in our life. Faith comes through hearing, hearing through the Word of Christ. In 2 Timothy, we read that all of Scripture is God-breathed. It's literally Spirit. And I love the last verse. Through the Word, we are put together and shaped up for the tasks God has for us. So we need a spiritual healing trajectory. So we start with dealing with the root cause. We don't mow over the dandelion, we dig it. And we do that through the Word of God, which encounters with the Word of God bring revelation. And then that brings forth a trajectory of healing for the soul. And the soul, our will, our thoughts, and emotions, we begin to see how our will was in contradiction to the will of God. Our thoughts in contradiction to the thoughts of God. And now we're given over to His will. We turn our will and our lives over to the care of God based on the true understanding of Him. And then we look for that, if we're dealing with the root, to give new healing to the body. The body begins to align with this transformation that comes from the spirit and the soul. And so that is what we are looking for in this healing trajectory, caring for the whole person, which means that we would come into line with so many of the things talked about in this room. We can't just tell someone to get over it, because what we want isn't a mowed over dandelion. We want a dead dandelion. And the way to get the dandelion to die, this dandelion of addiction, of harm, of all these responses to pain that only cause more pain, it's loss upon loss and pain upon pain, comes when we deal with the spiritual root. So, in Addiction Response Ministry, we have two different tools that we are using that we invite you to learn more about at our table in the back. We have the We Believe Open Group 12-step meetings that are based in the Life Recovery Bible, and they're open so anyone can come at any time. We also have Clean, Sober, and Saved, which is a curriculum-based model. The gospel of Jesus Christ is at the center. You can go to our website, which is addictionresponseministry.com. We have meetings listed there. And we want to thank so many partners in the room. We are actually, on a voluntary basis, being able to present Clean, Sober, and Saved in places like UPMC, Chautauqua WCA, and the county jail. And we are seeing excellent results and people coming into spiritual encounters where they are learning that they are more than their addiction, that they are loved by God, and that He desires to heal them, body, soul, and spirit. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Brett. And it's kind of appropriate that we kind of ended here with a pastor. We were going to do a Q&A session here after that, because it went so well the first two times. But something that I learned from a pastor one time is never make people late for lunch. Okay? So I just want to take a minute to thank all of the presenters who helped out with the Level Up presentations. Everybody did a great job with that.